And welcome. In our session today, our quiz today, we're going to focus on multi-layer switching. And boy, oh boy, after it's done, I've got like 6 or 7 questions, but they're doozies, and I think you'll like it. And we'll also do some tutorials on the way through for any questions we had a hard time with so we can better understand them. So if you're watching this, if you're participating live, welcome. It's great to have you. If we have not yet met, this is your first experience. My name is Keith Barker. I'm a double CCNA, got my first one in 2001. Another one in 2003, and then I got the opportunity to keep studying ever since. And so I'm glad that you're here, and my focus on the YouTube channel today, on my YouTube channel, is CCNA. There's hundreds of videos available for CCNA specific, and I've got playlists, so if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And with that, let's start the game. All right, Nat or Pat on R1 is using an access control list to support the 10.6.0 network with the 24-bit mask. Why can't switch 2 access the server? So let me give you a few moments on this topology. On the left, I've got the client. There's a multi-layer switch. That's the green one. And then there's a router performing NAT/PAT services out to the internet. Take a look at why you think switch 2 can't access the internet, the server, and let me know. Well, the majority of the vote was lack of routing on switch 2. NAT/PAT on R1 is using an access controller supporting 10.6.0. Why can't switch 2 access the server? I think this one deserves a little bit of teaching on this one. Let's show the media and take a look. Let me bring out a pen. If this is the router doing NAT/PAT, which it says it is, it also says that routing is in place based on this. If we're using an access control list to identify who can be translated, and it says it's supporting 10.6.0, that'd be like a standard access list 1, permit 10.6.0.0 with a wildcard mask of 0.0.0.255. So if that's being used, that means that anybody over here who's sourcing traffic from the 10.6.0 network would match that and can be translated as they go out, which is what R1 is doing. However, here's an interesting rule of thumb. Let's imagine that you had a house with 2 doors. We'll call this the back door and the front door. And let's say this leads to the park, and this front door leads to a school. All right, now my question is, if you are going to go to the park, which door are you going to exit? Go ahead and chat that in the chats if you in the comments. If you're going to leave this house and you want to go to the park, which door are you going to use, the back door or the front door? Yeah, I would agree. Back door. Why? It's closer. It's more direct. And on the other side of that, if we wanted to go to the school and we were at our house, we would probably use the front door because it's closer. Well, routers feel the same way. So if router 1 was going to try to reach the server, it would source it from this interface. That's be the source IP address. And if R1 was trying to reach the client, it would source the IP packet, if it was sourcing the ping, from this interface IP address. And in the case of this multi-layer switch, if it's trying to reach a server and it's got 2 switched virtual interfaces, which it does, it's a multi-layer switch. This is VLAN 6, this is VLAN 5. It's going to use its interface, VLAN 5, that IP address, and send the packet, forward the packet over to R1. Now, R1, when he sees it coming from this subnet, which is not the 10.6.0 network, basically, it doesn't qualify for NAT. And so R1 says, okay, I guess I'll forward. And you try to send a packet out to the internet, and it's not expecting a private IP address space as a source. At some point, it's going to be dropped. And very likely, it's going to be dropped right at your service provider who says, no. Well, so that's the logic behind why this answer is correct. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about it. Let me clear off that screen. Let me minimize that back down. And 15 of you nailed it. Way to go. Way to go. All right. This quiz is all about, I have 7 questions. It's all about multi-layer switching, and a lot of it is based on switched virtual interfaces. So if you're brand new to that, give yourself a little bit of a break. If you are just learning or studying it, this should be a really good reinforcement for that as well. All right. Continuing on. Rockstar Llama, first place after the first question. Here's question 2 of 7. Good luck, everybody. Which interfaces would R1 and switch 2, which interfaces would they use if they were becoming OSPF neighbors? Or, as the question states, if they were going to be become fully adjacent OSPF neighbors. If R1 and multi-layer switch 2 are going to become OSPF adjacent neighbors, it's going to be done using layer 3 interfaces. And so on a router, pretty easy. The layer 3 interface is going to be the 0, 0 interface. So it has an IP address, and they're in the same subnet between switch 2 and R1. Now, as far as which interface over here is going to be used, here's the giveaway. If this is VLAN 5, that means this port right here is an access port. So R1 is connected to an access port in VLAN 5. And so if this multi-layer switch wants to become a neighbor with R1, we would use interface VLAN 5 with an appropriate IP address in the same subnet. And while we're talking about OSPF just for a moment, let's talk about what has to match. This is so important. The things that have to match would be the network, the IP network. So they have to both believe it's the same street. So same IP network and mask, which also implies the same network. And then also the timers need to match. And also the MTU has to match. What else has to match? The authentication has to match. And timers, MTU, authentication. Oh, and the area number, like area 0. So those all have to match. And if they want to become neighbors, it would have to be 0, 0 on the router and the interface VLAN 5 on the multi-layer switch, because those would have the ability to become adjacent with each other. All right. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I do look forward to the office hour every week. I look forward to these quizzes, and I appreciate all the time and energy that you guys are putting into it. All right, here is question number 3. It's multiple select. Double points. This is a biggie. To block TCP port 23, which is the well-known destination port for Telnet, if we want to block that from the client on the left to the server on the right, where should the access control list with the IP access group command, where should it be placed? All right, and someone's asking, would it be a standard or an extended ACL? And that's a good reminder to discuss that. If we're trying to block anything higher than layer 3, it's going to require an extended access control list. If we're ever trying to match on the destination anything, that's also going to be an extended ACL. So in this, because we're trying to match on a layer 4 protocol, and more specifically a specific port in that protocol, the only way we could pull that off would be an extended access control list. Now it could be a named extended access control list, or it could be a numbered extended access control list, but it would be an access control list that is extended either way. To block that traffic from this client going to that server on TCP port 23, the logical path to make that happen is this. That'll help too. So we have the client, and they're connecting to a router called switch 2. And there's another router called R1. And the interfaces involved, the layer 3 interfaces involved, would be interface VLAN 6 over here. And this would be interface VLAN 5. Those are the logical interfaces, not the physical ones. And then over here in router 1, it's 0/0. So if we want to block the client as it's going to that destination, ideally it would be inbound on switch 2. And that traffic inbound would be logically coming in the IP packet on interface VLAN 6. And that's why, and this interface right here, that's a layer 2 access port. And a layer 3 access control list for IP is not going to have too much benefit on a layer 2 port, whether even if it would be accepted or not based on the capabilities. But a layer 2 port is not going to support a layer 3 ACL. So going back to the answers, the switch virtual interface for VLAN 6 inbound and the interface VLAN 6 inbound. And here's why those two are interesting. Those are the same thing. Interface VLAN 6 is a switched virtual interface for VLAN 6. And I wrote this question. I want to thank Dave this morning for proofing it with me. I wrote this question so I could reinforce the idea that the layer 3 interface, logical layer 3 interface, can go by a couple different names on a multi-layer switch. We could call it a switched virtual interface, or we could call it interface VLAN 6, which is how we'd go ahead and configure it. But they're talking about the same exact thing. All right, moving on, moving up. Here's question number 4 of 7. It is double points. R1 has an empty ARP cache. And then R1 pings the client. What does R1 do in preparation for that ping? So now that the quiz questions show up on your mobile device along with the answers in the diagram, I can use more real estate. Woohoo! R1 has an empty ARP cache, then pings the client. What does R1 do? 32 of you nailed it. And let's talk about why that is. So R1 needs to ping 10.6 something. Let's imagine this client is 99. So its IP address is 10.60.99. So router 1 would say my next hop is going to be the VLAN 5 interface of switch 2, whatever that happens to be. So interface VLAN 5's layer 2 address is the layer 2 address that R1 would ARP for in order to figure out what the layer 2 address is for that interface VLAN 5. And then once he forwards it to switch 2, it's switch 2's problem. Then switch 2 has looked at its routing table, says, oh, it's directly connected, and it's directly connected off of interface VLAN 6, and as a result, it would send it. So it wouldn't be these interfaces that were the next hops or anything like that. It would be the VLAN interfaces instead. And again, congratulations to everybody who got that correct. ARPs for switch 2's interface VLAN 5. If you want to join me for office hours, it's every Saturday on Discord at 10 a.m. Pacific. All right, which addresses, plural, could switch 2 on its switch virtual interface and R1 use to communicate? So which 2 IP addresses? One for the interface VLAN 5 and one for R1's 00 interface. All right, and the majority of you nailed it, so that's fantastic. Let's talk about why that is. In fact, we don't even need a diagram for this. Let me bring up a pen and let's just do a quick tutorial. The answer to this question is Subnet Saturday, which is a totally free playlist here on my YouTube channel. I've got one for CCNA, and I've also got one specific for, it's called Subnet Saturday. It's like 11 or 12 videos long. And it will walk you through step-by-step IPv4 from the beginning and just gradually, step-by-step, walk you through why we need to subnet, how to subnet. If you've never learned it or you used to know it and you forgot it or whatever, check out that playlist. Okay, so here's how I would solve this leveraging Subnet Saturday. I'd say, what's a /30? So the third, this is also, a lot of this is going to be visual in your mind, but this is how I'd represent that. So the third octet is that way, and the fourth octet is that way. And if we're using a /30 mask, I'll put my values here: 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1. And if you're saying, Keith, you're not telling me that a double CCIE writes that out. Yeah, I do, because I don't want to get a question wrong. And so they give you some automated tools if you take it online, where you can actually bring a little scratch board and put those up. Or if you do enough, if you're a visual learner or a visual person, you can maybe imagine it in your mind, but they give you tools that you could actually write that out on that little scratch pad, the digital one they give you, or if in a testing environment, a physical one. Either way, this is the fourth octet. It's a 30-bit mask, so that's the 24th bit here, so we'll do 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Boom! There's our dividing line. There's the block size. And the subnets are going to be 0, and you keep adding the block size. If you've been with me for Subnet Saturdays, you know that. So 4, and then 8, and then 12, and then 16, and 20. Yeah, just keep adding. And those are your subnets for the last octet. Those would all be /30s. And then the range would be 1 to 2, because the 3 is the broadcast address. You can't use it for a host address. And then the next subnet is 4, and it'd be 5 through 6, with 7 being the broadcast. And then the next subnet is 8, and so I'm just using the same techniques we've learned in Subnet Saturdays. And that'd be 9 through 10. So if you look at this and you have an aha moment, which I'm hoping we do, it's like, take a look at this. Where does .11 fit? .11 is the broadcast address for Subnet 8. And so we can't use that for our valid host address anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's on a router or a multi-layer switch. And the other one that's not right is 8. Because that is the actual subnet address itself. No bits are on the host portion, so that's not valid. So 9 and 10 are both in the same subnet. They're both in subnet 8, and that's why those two answers are correct. All right. Moving on. Here we go. I think we're just got a couple left. Gentle Dolphin is in first place, and Swift Wolf has a streak with 5 correct answers in a row. Congratulations to everyone. Here is question number 6. What is the destination layer 2 address on VLAN 6 when the client pings the server? I will make a mark here. That is at this point right here in the network. That's what we're talking about. So the client's pinging the server. What is the destination layer 2 address where that yellow arrow is? What is the destination layer 2 address on VLAN 6 when the client pings the server? Wow, 39 of you nailed it. That's great, great, great. Let's take a peek. Let me bring up the media real quick. And so here's what I'm thinking. If the client pings the server, so I ping out to 5.5.5.5, the client's going to say, wow, that's not local. It's not on the 10.6.0 network, so it figures out the layer 2 address for its default gateway, which would be interface VLAN 6 on the multi-layer switch here. And then it would forward the frame to the layer 2 address of interface VLAN 6, whatever that is on this multi-layer switch. And that is the answer, and that's why. So ARPs and layer 2 address resolution never leave the VLAN. They're always unique for the VLAN. So the client could care less about what the real layer 2 address is of the server. It could care less about what the layer 2 address is of the service provider. It could care less about what the layer 2 address is of R1. It only cares, as far as forwarding frames, what the layer 2 address is of the interface VLAN 6 on the multi-layer switch, assuming that's its default gateway that it's going to use. All right, let me clear that off. And I think we just have one more, and then we're done. And here it is. So good luck. The faster you answer the question, the more points you get. But be careful. Here's the final question for today's quiz. A /30 network is used on VLAN 5. Which exact wildcard mask should be used with OSPF? Oh, fantastic work. So if you have a /30 and a couple ways of figuring that out, shortcut-wise, we don't really need a topology for this, but if we have a /30, again, we can do this 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. And this is the third octet going that way, and the fourth octet here going that way. Octet just being a fancy way of saying 8 bits that are grouped together. And 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. There's our dividing line. So this is our network on the left, host bits on the right. There's our block size. And one way of doing this would be you can take 255 minus whatever that mask is for that octet, which I think is like 252. Is that right? Yeah, it is. And that'd be 3. Or even better, you can take that block size right there, which is 4, and say -1, and that's going to be our wildcard mask for that octet. So if that's a 4, -1 would be 3. Either way, it'd be 000.3. Doesn't really matter how you do that, and I walk you through a process or two to do that in Subnet Saturdays. Well, let's see how everybody did. It's been a kind of an interesting day. I want to thank Dave again for spending some time earlier, about 30 minutes before the episode, before the quiz, to help me out with proofing and taking a look and getting feedback on it. And let's see how we did overall. Here's the podium. All right, Clever Fox, you did it. You did it. All right, so good to have everybody here. As a group, we did 35% correct, and these are the toughest quiz questions. So 4 out of these 7 questions were pretty tough for the group, and let me get your feedback as well. And as you supply that feedback, let me go ahead and just chat with you for a moment about some options that are available to you. Number one is if you're studying CCNA and you want to chat with me and ask me questions about what you're studying, come join me every Saturday Pacific time on Discord. And I'm in the CCNA voice chat room, and it's my office hour every Saturday, 10 a.m. Pacific, and everyone's welcome. So you can put questions in the queue, or you can just come and listen in. And normally every week we have a topic. In fact, next week's topic is going to be IPv6. Been a lot of requests for that, so we're going to do IPv6 in the office hour on Saturday. And guess what? The quiz is going to be on the following Sunday. It's going to be IPv6, and that's, I think, how we're going to roll. So I ask for input, I get the input, and then I actually create the office hour review of it, and then a quiz on Sundays. Now, I had a few questions in the queue that were asking, what about office hours? I missed one or two. Are they recorded? And they're not recorded. They are just for the people who want to show up 10 a.m. Pacific every Saturday, and I don't record them. I don't record them locally because people are asking questions. If somebody asks a question, I want them to feel totally safe about asking their question and having some time with me to answer it if they'd like. And then, so join us for those. They're live. And then these recordings, fortunately, I'm doing the live stream, and I'm going to go ahead and pack it. I'm recording it locally. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit it later today, and I'll put that up as part of the playlist, so it'll be a shorter version. It'll have all the wait time taken out between the questions. I'll index it and put chapters on it so you can get there right away. So if the best thing you can do to help me, by the way, to get the word out is as you study your CCNA, if you find those resources valuable, if I tweet a quiz question, or if you have a playlist that you really enjoy, tell somebody about it. Let other people know who are studying their CCNA about Keith Barker. I'm in this game right here to help as many people as I possibly can, and I'm super glad that you're here as part of that.